Hey guys, so as you can see, I've got a watermark here. I'm testing some new software for the recording. I've got stuff on the sides. I've got everything over here. I like this more than OBS. The only thing I don't like is, you can't see it, but it's this sound level, sound monitoring up here. If I turn it down, it just makes everything quieter. It's not like noise canceling like on OBS. It's also delayed in the monitoring. It's not my favorite. I like everything else except that. So if you hear anything, well, right now you're going to hear the compressor, but the other thing would be the fans coming over there. Before we get started in this video, I want to mention a few things. This month is the first month where people are actually looking at my videos more than subscribers. So I got more viewers than subscribers now. And I've seen that they're starting to watch more videos coming through that way. I haven't seen them with my last video with AOC. So, and for some reason, I have 47 views, last time I checked today, on my camera setup. So I don't know what's really going on over there, but I do have more viewers this month than previously. So I wanted to bring that out. So this video is going to be pretty fun, I think. We're going to be talking about, first of all, why my name is the way it is on this channel. I think I've talked about it, but I'll talk about it again, since people have been starting to question me about that outside of YouTube. So, let's see. So, why do I call myself the false prophet? Well, it started in 2024 when there was this house fire, and it actually I lost most of my stuff. All of my ID, my passport, debit cards, credit cards, everything was lost in that fire. And it was a big thing. And it reminded me of the false prophet in the book of Revelation, when it says that the Antichrist and the false prophet was thrown into like a fire. And that's where the name came from, the false prophet. And that plays a role in what today's video is about. I'm going to try to cover everything. We're all going to go into depth. We're all going into detail. And hopefully I can do it at 8:30 at night, and I can think of everything. But we're going to go down this path, and we'll see how it goes. You might see me mess up this. I almost made that mistake. You might see me mess up the recording on this with the windows. It's not like OBS. You get more precise with it, but you know, if I make that mistake, it's probably going to happen. If you see it, it's just gonna, anyways, you'll know when you see it if I do it. So let's see. I can definitely tell that my writing, my typing on here isn't good. What I said, what is a false prophet in the book of Revelation? Hopefully the internet's okay. The internet seems to be working faster. It's probably just a log. I just did a video earlier today, the bubble of the United States system. But anyways, we're going to go through this and read this. So it does seem like it's going faster. In the book of Revelation, the false prophet is a symbolic figure tied to deception, influence, and misdirection, especially in matters that look spiritual or authoritative. The term appears explicitly in chapters like Revelation 16, 19, and 20 is closely connected to two other figures, the dragon and the beast. So the dragon, commonly understood as Satan, and the beast, a political or worldly power. The false prophet acts as the mouthpiece or promoter of the beast. What the false prophet does, according to Revelation, performs signs and wonders that convince people something is legitimate or divine, encourages people to follow or worship the beast, uses influence to mislead large groups of people, not through force but persuasion. So the role isn't brute power, it's convincing people to believe something false while it feels true. At its core, the false prophet represents deceptive guidance, something that looks spiritual, intelligent, or authoritative, but ultimately leads people in the wrong direction. That's why it's dangerous. It doesn't feel like a lie. There are a few major interpretations. It's a literal person, a future individual who will rise and mislead people, religious systems or ideology, institutions that distort truth. Symbolic force, any mechanism, media, leadership, or culture that steps belief in a misleading way. The ending, in Revelation's narrative, the false prophet is ultimately defeated alongside the beast. Wait, was it the... I thought it was the Antichrist. They could still make a fire. But now that I think of it, I think it might be the beast. Meaning deception doesn't win in the long run. If you separate all the imagery, the concept is pretty sharp. The false prophet is influence that convinces people to trust the wrong thing, especially when it feels right. What are the characteristics of the false prophet? I know that's probably not going to work, but we're going to see if we can do that. Oh, see, it did it that time. Not the spell checking. What are the characteristics of the false prophet in bullet points? Here are the core characteristics of the false prophet as described in the book of Revelation. It promotes another power, acts on behalf of the beast, not independently, performs convincing signs, uses miracles or impressive displays to gain trust, deceives large groups of people, misleads masses, not just individuals, doesn't appear obviously evil, relies on influence messaging and belief shaping. I'm just going through this list. It seems like all these things tie together. It's just repeating itself over and over. High level of manipulation and disguise truth. I do not like this because it's not going into as depth as I would like. I have an example right here. It's in my email. I saw it this morning. Let's see if it's around anywhere. Did I delete it? Because if I did, that was the wrong thing because I really wanted to keep it. Where is it? There's a spider on the wall again. Check my emails over here. Here it is. So I have it here. It says the first beast that comes from the sea is the Antichrist. And this is a second beast who emerges from the earth, the false prophet. This sinister figure will serve as the Antichrist accomplice, using religious and economic power to catapult him into global dominance. Let me make a note of that word economic. Where's my stickies? Stickies. I'll move that over here so I can see it. I need a bigger screen. I need 2 screens, maybe 3 screens. I want 3 screens. So there's 6 daily activities from the false prophet. He would emerge from the earth, perform miraculous signs, including bringing fire from heaven, erect an image of the Antichrist for worldwide worship, possibly rise the Antichrist from the dead, give life to the image, and control world commerce through the infamous mark of the beast. The unholy partnership forms a counterfeit trinity, which with Satan empowering both figures to deceive humanity during the tribulation. Now, I like that. It was a lot different than what we just read by ChatGPT. Prophet will rise the Antichrist from the dead. I don't know if it was... What was that? Dude, there was a spider that just went straight up. There's another one right there. Maybe one... I think I'm seeing 4 spiders right now. Well, it's getting pretty cold outside. They're probably around... Man, I do not like spiders. But anyways, I gotta do this video. So it says... It says, possibly raise the Antichrist from the dead. So... See, why does it do it for some of the words, but not all of them? I said that the false prophet possibly will rise. Possibly rise the Antichrist from the dead. Says one of the heads of the beast appears to have a fatal wound that was healed. The world is amazed and begins to follow the beast. Another figure later called the false prophet performs signs that convince people its power is illegitimate. So people say that the healed wound as a literal resurrection, or something that looks like a resurrection. So a political revival. A fallen leader system comes back into power and people treat it like a miracle. Now, I already know how all this ends. I know who all these people are. I know who all these figures are. I know the interpretive figures are. I know all of them. I could name them by name. I could tell you the year they show up. I could tell you all that information. In fact, you guys already know one of these figures. You actually know 3 of them. 2 of them. Well, 3 of them, all 3 are I've said on this channel. 2 of them, one is actually building up. He would be the Antichrist figure here. And the other one, of course. You know the other one. The danger isn't someone having real supernatural power. It's people being convinced they're seeing it. So, another figure I want to talk about is an Islamic figure. He is known as the Mahdi. Says, who is the Mahdi? Now, this is not West, well, even this stuff wasn't complete, but it might not get in depth of the Quran and Islam and all that because it's from a Western perspective. So I will correct it if I have to. I use Google and we can go through that like that. But I'm gonna see if ChatGPT can do it. If there's any problem, I'll just inform you. So the Mahdi is a figure in Islamic tradition, especially in end times eschatological belief, who is expected to appear before the day of judgment to restore justice and guide people. The Mahdi means the guided one. there's a belief that the Mahdi doesn't know he's the Mahdi until Allah shows him the way, God. Or another interpretation is when Jesus comes or Christ comes and Mahdi follows him. So he's the guided one. And if you know Christianity, it's kind of like, well, it's exactly like, one in Islam cannot pray to be the Mahdi. They cannot pray to be the opposing force. I can't pronounce it. I don't know. Like the Hall. He's like the Antichrist figure of. But there's a lot of people in Christianity who say the Mahdi is the Antichrist. But the Mahdi to Christ is like, I'm trying to not get too deep in here, but I think I might have to. The Mahdi is, so you can't pray to be the Mahdi. It means the guided one. But of all the guided ones, who's the guided one? It's like the chosen one of the chosen. Christianity, people want to be like Jesus, but they always fall short. It's kind of like that, but you know that you can't be Christ or Jesus. You are or you aren't, and that's the Mahdi. He is not mentioned explicitly in the Quran. He is mentioned in the Hadith. Most of what's known about him comes from the Hadith. I just said that. Sayings and traditions about the Prophet Muhammad. So, here's the core characteristics of him. He's a just leader. He will establish fairness and correct oppression. Appears during chaos. Comes at a time of global disorder, conflict, and confusion. He brings people together on a more truthful path. Often described as a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. Rules for a period of time. Commonly said to lead for several years. Often 7, 9, or similar ranges depending on sources. Prepares for the end times. His arrival is seen as a sign that major final events are approaching. So in Sunni Islam, the Mahdi is a future leader who has not yet appeared, not considered divine, just a righteous human, like a prophet. In Shia Islam, the Mahdi is believed to already exist in the hidden Imam, the 12th Imam. He is the occultation, hidden, and will return. Well, the Mahdi, and this is what I was saying, the Mahdi doesn't know he's the Mahdi unless he is met with the Christ figure. So they are both human figures. Related to other figures. The Mahdi appears before or alongside the return of Jesus Christ, known as Isa in Islam. Before or alongside the return. Could even be both. Jesus there plays a major role in defeating deception and restoring truth. What the Mahdi is not. Not considered a prophet, Muhammad is the final prophet in Islam. Not universally defined the same way across all Muslims. Not clearly described in one single uncontested source. So, the Mahdi represents a human leader who emerges in chaos, restores order, and prepares the world for final judgment. If you want to compare the Mahdi, the false prophet, and the Antichrist side by side, that's where a lot of people start connecting dots, sometimes quickly, sometimes way off. I can tell you this right now. You guys might already see it. Say the false prophet. You have the Mahdi who is guided. And you have Christians who see that the Mahdi is the Antichrist. All of these are true. And the false prophet, he can rise the Antichrist up. And the Mahdi, the false prophet on either side can raise both the Mahdi and the Antichrist. And Christ can be seen as the Antichrist because they don't know what to see. They don't know what's going on. It's almost as if they're more righteous or self-righteous than, they believe they can do no wrong. In a lot of ways, especially in a more global perspective, when they're trying to say, oh, well, Russia's the enemy. China's the enemy. Iran's the enemy. Israel's the good guy. Everyone's the enemy except them. And they would still be upset with the Mahdi, the Antichrist, the false. They will all get mad at all of them. Why are you getting mad at people when they're doing their job? They're the prophecy. Why are you throwing shade at these figures? Any of them. Even the evil guy on the side of Islam. I can't even pronounce the name right now. Interesting fact by the way. Before I did this video, I thought about something. Would you say approx that the name is as common in So, the Mahdi is said to have a name like Muhammad. And I was thinking, well, I only know a few Muhammads, and I know a few Christopher. I'm the only. I've met a few Christophers. I've met a few Muhammads. Probably about the same. Maybe I've seen more Muhammads than I met Christophers, but I'm going to ask ChatGPT this question because I know that Christopher is a very common name in the United States. I said, would you say approx that the name Muhammad is as common in the Middle East as Christopher in the U.S.? Let's say in a sentence. Let's not just go for a yes or no answer. Yes, names like Muhammad are broadly as common and even more widespread in Middle Eastern and Muslim majority regions as Christopher is in the United States. The Muhammad's prevalence is typically higher due to strong religious tradition. You would think that sounds weird because the name Christopher in a paragraph. I know you could probably mistranslate that. So, what does the name Christopher mean in a paragraph? The name Christopher comes from the Greek Christopheros. My middle name just happens to be Ross. Christopheros, meaning bearer of Christ, or one who carries Christ. It combines Christos, Christ meaning anointed one, and Pharaoh, to carry or bear. Historically, it's tied to the legend of St. Christopher, who was said to have carried a child across the river, later revealed to be Christ, symbolizing someone who carries faith, purpose, or greater responsibility through the world. Over time, the name has come to represent ideas like guidance, there's that word, the guided one, the Mahdi, guidance, protection, and carrying something meaningful that impacts others beyond oneself. That's where the Mahdi comes from. Mahdi, he's the guided one, and the Christ guides him outside of himself. And you already know who the Mahdi is. If you've been paying attention, you already know who he is. Let me go back to my notes. My sticky notes over here. So that's Christ, and that's as far as we can actually go before ChatGPT says don't look too much into it. Also, speaking of names, I can't believe this didn't occur to me before, but here. This is why I thought about this. So I bought some grape juice, which Welch's, I like these, by the way. I'm just pointing this out. It's not product placement. Well, I'm not getting paid to do this. But anyways, I'm just bringing this up. So, in the United States, we have this thing known as Welch's grape juice. It's everywhere, you know. Everyone's familiar when you're in the United States. But here, we have Welch's grape juice that looks like this. Right here. Welch's grape juice. If you can read that. Let me turn that. Get it in frame. So it says Welch's grape. And my last name just happens to be Welch. And I thought, you know, that reminds me of... What Bible verse is it? Oh man. I think it's Revelation 14. What does Revelation 14 say? You can read this. I think I got the wrong verse. Oh no, that's right. Okay. All I know is it was in chapter 14. So this is interesting. So it says that the lamb of 114,000. I don't know who the 114,000 is. A group of 114,000 people stands with the lamb. I thought that this 100... I think I might know who the 114,000 is. People would disagree with me on this. It's not referring to no church or anything like that. I did the math on this. The numbers aren't public. But if I was at all the numbers of certain government agencies and you added all the people up in those, I think you might get 144,000. So a group of 144,000 people stands with the Lamb, who is Christ, on Mount Zion. They are described as faithful and set apart, having God's name on their foreheads, like the mark of the beast, on their foreheads, symbol of identity and allegiance. They sing a unique song that only they can learn. I never heard that before. I never read that. I'm unfamiliar with that. This section represents loyalty, purity, purpose, and alignment with truth. The three angels. The first angel proclaims an eternal gospel to the whole world, calls people to fear God and give him glory. Second angel declares the fall of Babylon, a symbol of a corrupt system or empire. The third angel warns strongly against worshipping the beast, receiving its mark, says those who do will face judgment. This is basically a global warning system. Choose carefully who or what you align with. Call for endurance. Encourages believers to remain faithful under pressure. Says those who stay true even through hardship are blessed. 4. And here it comes. The harvest of the earth. Two harvest images. The first harvest is a figure like a son of man. Gathers the earth's crop. Often seen as the gathering of the righteous. Second harvest. Grapes are gathered and thrown into the winepress of God's wrath. The winepress, when you make grape juice, you have to squeeze grapes. Symbolizes judgment on those who follow deception. Welch's grape juice. My last name, you see. Revelation 14 is about division and outcome. There are two paths. There are clear warnings. There are final consequences. It's a chapter about choosing alignment and the fact that choices eventually become irreversible outcomes. I'll tell you this right now. I could not do this channel if I was just saying these things, not knowing any interpretations, like multiple interpretations of these things. I could not do this because there would be so many people saying, well, does he realize what he's really saying? And I do try to speak in a way where you can pick up on that self-awareness. But yeah, I could not do this channel if I did not have that kind of awareness about this. let's do something we haven't done before. I was going to say etymology, but we're going to do eschatology. I don't even know how to spell eschatology. Logical interpretation. Let's do that. Let's see what it says. Can't even do that. See, but it is on this one. Why can't it do? And those aren't even the words I was looking for. Interpretation. I don't know how to spell it. Eschatological. I know there's a G in there. Eschatological. Eschatological. I think it says that I'm wrong. Oh, here it is. Now it wants to correct it. Eschatological. See, when I read these words, I'm usually saying in my head, and I hear other people say them. I usually do not say these words like in casual conversation, so they're very hard for me to pronounce. So what does my name, Christopher Ross Welch, mean in eschatological interpretation? What just happened? Why did that just go up like that? Interesting. So it says, if you look at your forename symbolically, not as prophecy or destiny, but as layered meaning, it breaks down like this. Christopher, the bearer of Christ, someone who creates truth, responsibility, or a message. Ross, from Gaelic roots meaning headland or promontory, a place that juts out, stands apart, or sees farther than others. Welch, derived from Welsh, foreigner or outsider, someone not of the system, seen as different. Put together, eschatology, a symbolic reading would sound like one who carries the message of Christ, standing apart with a broader view, yet seen as an outsider to the world around him. It's easy to take meanings like this and push them into something absolute or prophetic, but names don't assign roles. They reflect themes people can choose to live into or ignore. You can't choose things like that, just like you can't choose your name. You grow into it. This whole thing about choice and all that, that's a Western thing. It's not grounded in reality. I mean, you can believe that, well, my own reality is I have a choice. Well, the choice and free will, as you see it, is just a doctrine of what made the United States the United States. You really don't have a choice. There was no such thing as freedom. That's paperweight of democracy. It doesn't really exist. I mean, to say democracy exists is like saying, well, you can choose your own God. You can choose what God is actually. I mean, the universe. If you were created by something outside the universe, well, you can't change that. There was something that created you. If you believe in God, you would have to also believe, well, a different kind of God. Different gods for everything. But just, if you're a Christian, whatever, then you would see, well, this God is not of choice. In the way that we understand all politics. Because if you know, you understand what I'm saying. If you lean into that interpretation in a healthy way, it points to carrying responsibility carefully, thinking independently without isolating yourself, making sure what you carry is actually grounded in reality, not just feeling meaningful. Again, if you say, well, grounded in reality, well, that's just my own truth, and you have to define that. See, this is just Western philosophy counteracting itself. Because the trap here is obvious. The same traits that look like purpose can also drift into feeling uniquely chosen or set apart in a way that disconnects you from reality. But how would you know which one of those is true? It's a bunch of nonsense. Your name can be read symbolically as someone who carries meaning, sees differently, and stands apart, which is pretty much what this channel is. But remember, this is how grounded and where you keep that, and not how grand it sounds. You will not choose that. You will not pray to be that person. Either you are or you're not. So I'm going to do this for another person. I'm not going to try to spell eschatological again. Interestingly, and I figured this out the other day. Did you know that the surname of Lloyd, it could even be the first name, that name is Welsh, just like Welch is. Although I think Welch is more of a more direct derivative of the name Welsh, from Welch, from Wales, and all that. And Welch's grape juice. Actually, let's bring that up. Okay. I said Welch is interesting because it deals with grape juice, and the grapes are symbolic in the book of Revelation. Welch is actually, it's a family. ChatGPT is twisting things here, which it commonly does. And I have to get onto it all the time when it does that, because it doesn't want to lean you too far in one direction. It's something me and ChatGPT, we don't get along with. So it says, you're noticing real connection, which is stretching it a bit further than it actually goes. How would you know that? We could go into a whole debate about that. Anyways, Welch comes from Welsh, meaning foreigner or an outsider. Welch's grape juice is just a modern company name, which happens to match your surname. It's actually a family name. The grape connection is coincidental, not into the name itself. I wasn't talking about me, I was talking about the book of Revelation. I had nothing to do with this. I was just saying, yeah. But again, you're using the word coincidence. Can we go back and Google that word? Just to set the record straight, because I've said it already so many times. Coincidence means what? A remarkable concurrence of events or circumstances without apparent causal connection. Likewise, you could say a remarkable concurrence of events or it wouldn't be circumstances, that would be circumstantial, which is a better word than circumstances. Without apparent causal connection. You could also say an apparent causal connection without a remarkable concurrence of events or circumstances. So you could actually read it the other way. Which way do you interpret? It all depends on who receives the word coincidence. Coincidence is a really bad word that we use. A coincidence is a remarkable concurrence of events or circumstances that have no apparent causal connection with one another. That wouldn't necessarily be coincidence. That could also be the word coincide. Coincide can... I prefer to use the word coincide, which means to fall together. And I use circumstantial to match the circumstances between what is coincides. And you could say, well, that's a coincidence. Yeah, well, they don't use coincidence always in the same way. So it's a huge mess. The act of conditional coinciding, correspondence, a perfect coincidence between truth and goodness. Coincidence is a really bad word. It's a coincidence, like coincidence is a word. It's a really... I don't like that word. So let's continue. Book of Revelation, grapes are used symbolically. Grapes are gathered and thrown into the winepress of God's wrath. The image is about judgment, not nourishment or blessing. It's judgment. You step on the grapes. You crush them. And it's actually the winepress, when God steps on these grapes, blood spatters. It gets all over them. And in future verse of Revelation is, God arrives and his garments are dripped in blood, which are seen as from the grapes that were squished. It represents the outcome of corruption being fully exposed and crushed. You're linking your last name, Welch. Welch is grape juice with vertical symbol, grapes, judgment. That's pattern recognition, not a direct meaning. You're recognizing symbolic overlap. You're thinking layers and connections. Treating coincidences as intentional signs about you personally. I didn't say that. I just put... Well, I wasn't talking about myself. I was just saying the name Welch. It's reading too much into this. And that's exactly what I don't talk about ChatGPT about it, because it doesn't... It twists things. The same path is where people lose footing fast. Yes, grape sounds symbolic in Revelation, but your last name's connection to grape juice is modern and unrelated symbolism. That is not true, because so where does the name Welch's grape juice come from? Oh. What is the details of the company? It would have to be circumstantial. Circumstantial would fit this better than using the word coincidence does not solve anything in a meaningful, like if you're writing a college paper, you will not use the word coincidence unless you were trying to oppose what a coincidence is. For example, if you said, well, these things, if you're writing a paper and you said, well, these things are coincidences, that makes a very weak argument in a research paper, even in an essay. Don't use the word coincidence. If you were saying, if things appeared as a coincidence, if things first appear as a coincidence, this is why they're not a coincidence. So you would counter why it's not a coincidence. You wouldn't say it's a coincidence in your own thesis or in your description. You'd have a weak paper if you did that. You would have to counter the coincidence, because you have to think about what the reader is going to interpret what you just said as. He said, that may look like a coincidence, but here's how this works. And you give a breakdown, and that would be a stronger paper. So where does the name Welch's Grape Juice come from? What is the details of the company in a paragraph? I should have said, or the details. So it traces back to 1869 when Thomas Bremer Welch, like I said, is family owned, a dentist and Methodist, developed a method to pasteurize grape juice so it wouldn't ferment into alcohol. His goal was to create a non-alcoholic wine alternative for church communion. Aligning with the temperance movement. Guys, and you're telling me that this is not about the Bible? I mean, you see the history here. So it says, the temperance movement of the time, he called it Dr. Welch's unfermented wine, and the son later helped commercialize it into a broader product line. The company eventually became the National Grape Cooperative Association, formed in 1945, owned by thousands of American grape owners, mainly in places like New York and Michigan. Today, Welch's produces juices, jams, and other fruit-based products, but its identity still ties back to what original purpose, preserving grape juice in a way that keeps it non-alcoholic while maintaining flavor. See, we went through that, and you didn't say anything about this thing, anything about the book of Revelation or anything. You didn't counter that. You just it picks and chooses whatever it wants to talk about. It twists things. But that's the history of Welch's grape juice. It started with grapes, which was right after the Civil War. We just made a video about that from 1870 when the DOJ was created. So, yeah. So I wanted to go and, let's see, what does the name mean in an eschatological interpretation? If you break down the name symbolically, again not as this and just layered meaning, each part carries its own theme. Jacob, often understood as supplanter or one who follows after, takes place of another, someone who emerges through struggle or reversal. Matthew means gift of God, something given, not earned, often tied to purpose or calling. Grey, from Welsh. Well, I think that'd be lewd, means gray, associated with ambiguity, in between states, or not being clearly one thing or another, or the balance between white and black, or light and dark. There's also a thing known as gray thinking, which is you see multiple perspectives, and you have a neutral perspective, but you see everyone's perspective coming together. And you don't choose sides, you see everyone's perspective. It's called gray thinking. So let's go through that. What is gray thinking? Gray thinking is the ability to embrace nuance, complexity, and ambiguity, rejecting rigid black and white or all or nothing mentalities. It involves seeing situations on a spectrum, avoiding absolute judgments, considering multiple perspectives before forming conclusions. This approach includes decision-making, emotional stability, and open-mindedness. So it does fit into that Mahdi symbolism I mentioned earlier. How you bring peace from oppression, justice and all that. So you do know who the Mahdi is. It's Jake. And when people say, well, how can you say that how can you make an absolute judgment like that if you're supposed to have great thinking? Great thinking has its limits. In Western philosophy and Western philosophy and politics would say, well, you can't have absolutes. But in this case, you can, because that's who he is. Now, he can see these things, but you gotta have something as a grounding thing. So let's go through here. So it says, a symbolic reading would sound like one who emerges through reversal or struggle, given as a gift, yet existing in an ambiguous or in-between state. Balance to the force, if you will. Emerges through reversal or struggle. He had to go through all the people say that he's actually one of the first famous cases of cyberbullying, and people even threw rocks at him at school. They mocked him and everything else, and so he did struggle. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and all this. That kind of interpretation can feel powerful, but it's still constructed meaning, not something assigned to a person role in the world. You can map almost any name into a narrative if you look at it through a symbolic lens. That's true. However, there's a limit to that, depending on who is speaking and depending on who is all involved. And does it fit with the people? Like if you just went out and said, oh, that guy is such and such, such and such. So you couldn't do that. Like if you were just a random person that, oh, that's such and such, such and such meaning of a name, well, it doesn't have any authority. But if you're speaking from someone who has authority, with that name, with a strong name, and they're saying it in relation to who they are, then you can see from the outside source. This makes more sense if you're outside the United States. If you're in America, they'll always want to debate you about meanings and interpretations. They're like so lost in confusion that they can't think straight. There's no foundation in their thinking. It's just how they are. I don't like it. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people in different countries don't like it. It's what it is. And yes, it is going to hurt them in the end, in the long run. Well, short term now, but eventually it's going to come to an end. These are part of this isn't what role does this name prove. It's struggle, how someone responds to pressure. Gift, what they do with what they're given. Gray, how they handle ambiguity without losing clarity. Symbolic name can be read as someone shaped by struggle, carrying something meaningful while navigating ambiguity. But here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys. That can apply to everybody, but not everyone has that name. Everyone is a Jake. More Jake-like than Christ-like. Everyone is shaped by struggle. Everyone is carrying something meaningful while navigating the ambiguity of life. Anyone could fit in that, but that's not their name, is what I'm saying. This is a more foundational of what everyone else is built on. So he's more human. In a way, he'd be more human than Christ comes as a human. But like with your name, what matters isn't the interpretation. It's whether the person stays real in reality while dealing with those themes. But here's the thing. You don't have a choice in that. You don't... stays grounded in reality while dealing with... They'll still be living in a reality, whether it's their own reality or the reality of other people. You can't change that. That's how their minds are. You cannot change who you are. So it's a moot point what ChatGPT is saying. And this is why I don't like to talk to ChatGPT. It always wants to do this nonsense. It wants to go into some debate, say it's not in a debate, say it won't continue going into a debate, yet it continues to go down that direction of philosophy. It's a mess. I'm sure eventually it's going to end, but it's just a bunch of nonsense. So yeah, he's the Mahdi, and he is rising up. Jake is rising up in the world. I will be making a video. This is the reason why I got this software, was because I'm wanting to... Hang on. Let me close that. The reason I got the CCam software was so I could do a better video to do that May 5th video. And I've bought some upgrades for my camera today. It cost me about $100. It was a HDMI cable that goes to a capture device, so I can record 4K 30 frame per second video in higher quality than dealing with this. And I want to have it set up where I can look at the camera in that direction, not right here. So yeah, that's coming on May 5th. That video will come out on May 5th. I should have all that stuff by this weekend. I'm recording this on April 20th, but I should be getting that on April 25th. Which by the time you see this video, that day is already going to be past. I got videos right now going out to, I believe the last video is April 29th. Is my last video that I did earlier today. I don't have it on here. Let me make sure. Sometimes if I don't read this, I get the dates wrong. Yeah, April 29th. So yeah. So there is some more information I've discovered. And so it's a remake of the Truth About Anakin video I made last year. There's not gonna be chirping. There's gonna be more. I can't. We're just gonna go through information and look through things. I'm not gonna do an analysis. I do have a photo. I'm not gonna do an analysis on it. It's the same photo, but that I did before from what was it? February or March? Maybe it was January. I don't remember, but it was when he made his appearance in January. That photo. But this is a different one. But it's the same photo. It's just different photo. You know what I mean when we get there. Let me see what else.
We talked about the Mahdi, we talked about the false prophet, we talked about the Antichrist.
Let's Google what that's, because I feel like Google might give us a better answer than ChatGPT will. Why does it stop me at the... Okay. Who or what is the Mahdi? The Mahdi meaning directly guided one, a messianic figure in Islamic eschatology believed to be a descendant of Prophet Muhammad who will appear at the end of times. He is prophesied to appear during a period of immense global injustice and turmoil to restore righteousness, unite Muslims, and rule for several years before the return of Jesus Christ. Now, that's just an interpretation. There's many interpretations. It says before the return of Christ. But he said it could also work alongside. So he is seen as a deliverer who will fill the world with justice and equity, eradicating tyranny. Now people say, well, why do you have that if you have Christ? Because you got to have two. It makes sense if you understand where they're coming from, the institutions they're coming out of. Both come out of the United States. One comes out of a mental institution. The other one has a mental institutional background. And you can't have one without the other. But I will say this. Both will be equally hated. And this whole thing was going to be a tragedy. It was going to be a tragedy either way you sliced it. Whether they showed up or not, it was going to be a tragedy between the two. He is expected to appear just before the day of judgment. While not a prophet, he is described as a supreme leader, caliph, the supreme leader of Islam, or even a political leader who will rule according to Islamic teachings. I'm not going to get into that. Try not to offend anyone here, but it's not about Islam. It's what Paul did with Christianity. He turned into a philosophy of a religion that people would follow because it grew Christ. That was the better choice than just making it about Jesus, you know. Same thing is happening with Islam. Prophet Muhammad, he created Islam so everyone could have followers to lead them to a path of truth. But it's not about Islam at all. It's about these figures. It's about building up to these figures. It's not about religion. It's not about ideology. It's like saying, well, Christianity doesn't do that. It doesn't say, well, Christ is going to make everyone a Christian in the world. Thank God for that. But Christians do that work on their own, and Muslims do that on their own as too. But Mahdi and Christ do not do this. This is human thinking. These are beyond, like, if people are here, Mahdi is here, and Christ is up here. I mean, sometimes it's right here. I'll explain it in a second. Also, I gotta talk about this economic thing. Hopefully I don't forget about that. He is believed to be a descendant of Prophet Muhammad, often holding the same name, Muhammad bin Abd. That's a nickname. That would be like saying that someone is the Christ or someone is Jesus. That is a nickname. But like Muhammad and Christopher, you see, that's what brought me up to that. Sunni generally that Mahdi has not been born yet and will appear in the future as new leader. Now Shia, which is what I've heard is growing in Islam, is they believe the Mahdi is born. He's already born. Born in the 9th century and went in an occultation hiding by God. They believe he is still alive and will return to fulfill his role. So he's still alive. So it's like the Christ figure. He's still alive, but he's not on earth. So there's a mumbo jumbo right there. The coming of the Mahdi is considered one of the major signs of the inner world. His primary mission is to rectify injustices and wrongdoing prevalent in the world. He's supposed to lead the global Muslim community. While the Mahdi is not mentioned in the Quran, his role is in many hadiths or narrations. I want to speak about this. This is not a concept known in the United States, in the Western world. It is known in the Middle East, and that is a that is a concept of fathers and sons. Christians should know this. I don't know why they don't. A lot of people don't understand. This is not a thing known in the West. Let's go. Can you explain? It's actually forefathers and sons. If you know the name of Jacob, his name eventually turns into Israel, and that's where we get the name Israel from. So, Jacob is the forefather of modern day Jews and Israel, people in Israel. Sons would be. I'll tell you this. If people in the United States understood what, it's ironic, it's Christians, Republicans and all that, conservatives, if they knew about what Jesus was saying, then they wouldn't be fighting with Iran. They would know they would lose. I'm not going into that, but we can explain it here. I said, can you explain forefathers and sons as a Middle Eastern concept? In many Eastern cultures, forefathers and sons aren't just biological terms. They're part of a deep identity system titled lineage, honor, and continuity across generations. They represent origin and authority, carrying legacy, values, reputation of the family or tribe. Often referenced in speech of son of, or tracing lineage back generation, like the son of God, for example, or son of the Father. That would be more common to say in Middle East. They would say, I'm the son of whoever. Their actions reflect on descendants, even centuries later. In many contexts, honoring forefathers means preserving tradition, maintaining family honor, not breaking continue with the past. So, here's how it works. If you're born in the Middle East, you're known as a son, or your forefathers. So let's say that you're in a family, and you carry the traditions, thoughts, mentality of your forefathers centuries ago, even thousands of years ago. And how it works is you're pretty much the same consciousness as they are, just living in a different time period. So, in other words, the sons would be the direct consciousness of the forefathers. And that doesn't change. That continues. But the year always changes. But nothing progresses. The years change, nothing progresses, and everyone is the same person centuries later. Example of this is, we call Persia, we say Iran, which used to be Persia, but in forefathers and sons, you would say that Iran is still Persia, because Persia is the forefather of the son of Iran. So it's still Persia. It has the mentality, the consciousness of Persia. In the United States, we just see that, Persia is just a long time ago. It's now called Iran. And here's a danger to the United States. This war, using forefathers, that means that the war that the United States is in today with Iran happened a long, long, long time ago. The war with Israel was fought a long, 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 long time ago. In fact, both of these wars, I don't know for exactly, but that would mean Iran is fighting two wars that happened in the past, as Persia. So that would mean that Israel would be one of them, but I don't know who that other one is. It could be Babylon, it could be the Roman Empire, I don't know. I'm not a historian, but I know this war happened before. And here's the thing. The son of the United States. The United States is a son of another country, of that country that once fought with Iran. Obviously, they lost because we don't hear their name anymore today. Maybe in background history, but not in their common day. So that means that Persia defeated whoever the forefather of the United States was. If they knew that, they would not be fighting Iran or Iran. Represents continuation and responsibility. Expected to carry forward the name, values, and reputation. Their behavior can elevate or damage the standing of the lineage. Not just individuals, they are extensions of the family identity. Like I said, they're the same person, just in a different body, same mentality, same consciousness, but the years have changed. But things still remain the same. So they were the ones who were fighting against the forefather of the United States way back when. Even if they don't know that, they're the forefathers. They're the sons of the forefathers. It's like how, and I'm going to explain this between Mahdi and Christ in a second. The deeper concept, this is the key. In this framework, you are not just yourself. You are a link in a chain. Forefathers give you the identity. You preserve or alter it. Sons inherit what you leave behind. Why this matters culture. Decisions are often made with long-term generational impact in mind. Honor and shame are collective, not individual. Names, ancestry, and lineage carry real weight in how people are perceived. In religious, it's called tautological language. The idea shows up heavily in texts like the Bible and Quran. God of your fathers, the sons of God, or the son of God. Ties faith to lineage defines belonging, not just biology. It becomes symbolic of inheritance of belief, continuation of truth or error, accountability across generation. This is how they were speaking in Israel. That's why it doesn't. And God says, Jesus says, me and the Father are one. The Son and the forefathers are one. The people of Israel and Jacob are one. The Father and the Son are one. You see what I'm saying here? Forefathers and sons in Middle Eastern context means you inherit a past you didn't choose, and you're responsible for what that future inherits from you. Here's where things get interesting. Between me and Jake, the only way that our lives make sense is that we are sharing the same consciousness in different bodies in the same timeline. Now, theoretically, this is possible. To have the same consciousness in two different bodies, that's theoretically possible. However, from their Eastern standpoint, if someone was like that, they would be seen as the Father and the Son are one. Who is the Father and who is the Son? Well, I am not a child of Jake's, even though he is older than I am. But we share the same consciousness. So the Father and the Son are one. Now, Christ is the Father of Israel, is the Father of Jacob, which is Israel, the Son of God. So that all connects. Now, if to throw that to ChatGPT, it's going to go crazy. So if I say, well, actually, maybe I could say Israel, the son of Jacob. Actually, I think it's Abraham. Religion is also Islam, Judaism, Christianity. Those are Abrahamic religions. I believe Jacob was the son of Abraham. Actually, no. It would be Israel would be the son of Abraham. Is Israel the son of Abraham, which Abraham would be the father? The answer should be yes to this. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Israel, the nation, or Israel, even a person, would be the son of Abraham. Is Abraham the forefather of Israel? In one word. Yes. You can also say, is Abraham the forefather of Christianity? That should also be yes. Because Jesus was, they say he's a Jew, but from Israel, around, is Abraham the forefather of Christianity, in one word? That answer should also be yes. Yes, because it's Abrahamic religion. So, the Son and the Father are one. What does that mean in this case? Abraham would be, let me think. Abraham, the son of... You could also say that Israel is the forefather of Christianity. But would Israel be the forefather of Judaism? And would Israel be the forefather of Islam? Not necessarily true. I don't think so. Because those are different time periods. I think Islam was before Christianity. Maybe Christianity came first. But the timelines don't add up. So you could say, well, let's say, is God the forefather? Well, let's say forefather of Israel. Is God the forefather of Israel? It says not exactly. That depends on what you... If you mean... I was trying to avoid saying the word Christ, but Christ wouldn't fit in that. Not until the end. But... in the Bible, Israel traced back to human lineage, back to Abraham. So he's the forefather in the genealogical sense. God is understood and said as the creator of covenant source, the one who establishes and sustains Israel's identity, not a forefather in the human lineage sense. Here's what's interesting about Islam. If I was to say that me and Jake, the Father and the Son, are one, people would say, wow, that's so cool, that's interesting. That wouldn't raise flags about God and Christ, Now, in Christianity, if I said that the Father and Son are one, they would be like, I don't know, they don't have no concept of that. That's like saying the color blue in a country, in a timeline where blue wasn't a defined color. So it says, the one who establishes and sustains Israel's lineage, not a forefather in human lineage sense. Some have said that the angel that Jacob fights, well, it would be Jacob who is the forefather. Hang on. Christ would be that's called a Christophany, by the way. Some people believe it was Christ who was fighting Jacob. Because Christophany is a representation of God on the earth in human form. So if it was fighting, then you would see this as Christophany in a Christian sense. In Judaism, it's more of an angel, and it's not God, or although it might be seen as, it depends on interpretation. Abraham is forefather in God, origin, authority, relation, and covenant. See, that would have been too broad if I said God. I was trying to avoid the name Christ. What is a Christophany? Interesting. Christopher, Christophany, Christopher. See, what is a Christophany? The Christophany is an appearance or manifestation of Jesus Christ before his birth in the New Testament. In other words, Christians use the term for moments in the Old Testament where they believe Christ shows up in the temporary visible, like with Jacob. what it simply means. Christo, Christ. Pheny means appearance or manifestation, so appearance of Christ. How it's understood. In Christian interpretation, Christophany is not the incarnation, that's Jesus being born as a human, but it can be. It can be an incarnation before it can actually be after his resurrection. We're going to get into this because it's kind of loopy language. But we're going to go into this. But a pre-incarnate appearance, a temporary revealing of Christ. Now here's what's interesting. A pre-incarnate appearance can be, you can see Christ right now. Listen to me closely. You can see him right now as a pre-incarnate appearance before he appears on the world stage. So that can also be a Christophany. He can be there and not there at the same time. See how that's loopy language? Pre-incarnate, you can see his appearance, but he's not on the world stage yet. So that would be a Christophany. He has to make his appearance on the world stage before it can actually be moved from a pre-appearance from his presence on the world stage. Because that's when it matters. I hope that made sense. Common examples people point to the angel of the Lord, a mysterious figure who speaks as God, not just for God. The fourth figure in the fire book of Daniel, described as like a son of the gods. Son of the Father, son of the gods, son of man is actually Adam. Son of man is Adam. And the Father would be son of the Father would be God. That would be Genesis. The commander of the Lord's army, the book of Joshua, a divine warrior figure. So some interpret this as Christophanies. Others see them differently. It's debated. Important nuance. The term Christophany itself does not appear in the Bible. It's a theological label applied later by Christians trying to interpret certain passages. A Christophany is a believed appearance of Christ before his birth. That's like we say angel of the Lord, that's before the New Testament. But it can also be after the resurrection, recognized in hindsight through interpretation. Right. So if you see him, he's recognized in hindsight. After a world stage, when his presence is known, it's recognized in hindsight through interpretation, not explicitly stated in the text. So it can happen after the resurrection. How do you tell the difference between God appearing, an angel, and Christ specifically? Or they call it post-resurrection, after the resurrection. It says, but Christophanies also appear post-resurrection. It says, right, you question that. But the claim is what most theology sticks to. Who cares what most theology sticks to? It's what fits the pattern, fits the signature. It says, technically no. Post-resurrection appearances of Jesus Christ are not called Christophanies. Again, it's in hindsight. They were in hindsight. Why did the distinction exist? Christophany, appearance of Christ before the incarnation, birth. Depends on what you mean by birth. Post-resurrection appearances. Christ appearing after he has already lived, died, and risen. There was once upon a time when technically that would also include every time that he was alive speaking to people. That would be a Christophany to those people who did not know who he was. And there were a lot of them who didn't know who he was. That was a hindsight interpretation of who he was later on after he died and rose again. That's how you get Christ has risen. Because if he didn't rise, if he didn't rise, he'd be an everyday person. So it's a hindsight thing. So yeah, if there are any people making that debate, they're stupid, right? You have to, if he didn't rise, you wouldn't be having this conversation. So those would be Christophanies as well. So once Jesus has entered history through birth, the label changes. But they didn't know he was born until after he rose again. Well, after he rose. After he rose again, then you have another Christophany in hindsight. After that point, they're usually just called appearances of the risen Christ. then you would say appearances of the risen Christophany, or Christophany that has risen on the world stage. See, it's moving in transitions where confusion comes from. People sometimes use Christophany more loosely to mean any visible manifestation of Christ. In the broader sense, yes, you could include post-resurrection appearances, but that's not the precise or traditional use. Well, tradition changes in this case. Examples of the post-resurrection appearing to the disciples with physical interaction, eating, etc. Right, that's what I was saying. In the everyday life of the disciples and everyone who didn't know who he was. Appearing to Paul on the road to Damascus, more visionary intent. These are different in nature. Some are physical and tangible. Some are visionary and overwhelming experiences. The real dividing line. Before birth, hidden identity, interpreted later, a Christophany. After resurrection, known identity, directly recognized appearances of Christ. But appearance of Christ is still a Christophany. He has a hidden identity. They don't know his name. The book of Revelation says no one knows his name. And interpreted later, that's a Christophany. It's a Christophany. They don't know who he is after... they know who he is in the Bible, but they don't know who he is as a figure or a face. Some say that he's just an event. The second coming is just an event. There's no face. Well, they're probably going to get that too. So you're picking up on something real. Christ appears in multiple forms across time, but Christophany, in a specific label, is a pre-birth appearance. You have to define birth in this case. Birth to the world stage, that would be a pre-birth, wouldn't it? Not a catch-all for every appearance. So I wanted to show you, before I leave, I want to interpret what the word economic means. Like economic, what did the email say? It said economic, hang on, let me find it. It says, using religious and economic power to catapult him into global dominance. Here's another thing the United States messes up on. What is economic? What does economic mean? This whole entire thing, for those who don't know, has been economical. There's been exchange. What does economic mean in a... Most people see it as financial or give or take. Economic means relating to how resources like money, goods, and services are produced, distributed, and used. That is incorrect. That is the United States version, and they're going to die by it. They're going to suffer from that. But on the outside world, it's an exchange of culture, knowledge, views. It's much more broader than just finance. This is just a financial view. Even if you had if you majored in it, got a high level degree, got PhD, got everything straight A's, understand everything about finance, economics, and all this, forecasting, analysis, and all this, you would still fail in the power of economic understanding that puts people in global dominance. Because let me tell you this, if everyone saw it, if everyone understood economics in that way, then everyone would be doing it. If everyone understood that, then everyone could get global dominance. But because it's all scholarly, it's all educational, philosophy, finance, United States limited understanding, because of that, it limits who they are. It limits freedom, constrains them, limits them. And if everyone could see outside of that, then anyone could raise the global dominance on the world stage. Anybody. So what is restraining you from doing that? I don't know. It's something. I said that's the United States view of economic, but what's the broader view? The U.S. definition isn't wrong, it's just narrow and market focused. It's about markets, forecasting, and even if you did all that, you wouldn't know, you wouldn't be able to get to that level because it's not about forecasting, it's about not knowing more information. It's not about marketing. It's nothing like that. It's about the global world itself, aligning with the global world. That's why the Antichrist is called the Antichrist, because they can align with the world. Of course, it was actually the false prophet that does this, not the Antichrist. But they align with the Antichrist. If you know, I'm trying not to get too deep into that, but you understand what I'm saying, hopefully. The broader meaning of economic is rather than money. Economic means how society organizes, allocates, manages its limited resources, whether through money, water, tradition, or power to meet its needs. That's not right. That's still a United States Western view. It's not always limited resources. For example, if I said the United States, if the United States was going to be destroyed, that's an abundance of information passed along generation for generations for generations. It's infinite. It's not a scarce resource. It proves the market theory of economics false. So yeah, this is just limited. Which is important. It's not just money. It includes time, labor, energy, land, relationships. It's not just markets. It includes families, tribes, states, and formal systems. It's not just efficiency. It includes survival, stability, and social order. Yeah, but that wasn't exactly... I was trying to go more broader than that. You know, cultures, traditions, understanding things, understanding different countries, how they do things. More outside of currency, money, markets, and all that. That's a very narrow focus, and if you think that's a path to truth, you're so way off. If you think you can buy yourself out of trouble, you have lost. You are literally living in a delusion, in lack of a better term. In many parts of the world, historically and today, economic activity can look like sharing within a family or tribe, exchanging favors instead of cash, controlling resources through authority rather than markets. The U.S. version focuses more on money and markets. I mean, this was just pretty much all money and markets here. The broader version is about how humans deal with scarcity, period. That's not true. That's not true. But, you know, that's their downfall. That's the Western view. Europe doesn't really have that problem because it's not separated by two oceans. But the United States is... Russia, it has lost touch with reality. And it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And technology has played a large role in that. People can now do stock markets and all this. Say, oh, we're going to make money, we're going to do all this. And they live in this isolated form where eventually the money is going to be useless when they're isolated. So, I mean, would you rather do that or rather learn about other countries? I mean, that's how you get global dominance. Global dominance is not through money and currency and buying your way through things or limited resources. Global dominance is not about scarcity at all. It's about knowing how to leverage things. That's how the rich get rich. It's about living in a mind of abundance, thinking in abundance. People will always say, well, everything is scarce. Well, that's because you believe it is. You know, avoid the things that are scarce. You know, debt is infinite. You can make infinite debt. Credit cards and such like that. If there was no abundance in the United States system of currency and markets, banks would go bankrupt and there would be like $1 would be $1, $3 would be $3. Yeah, you would have less inflation, but you won't have any growth. So growth in relation to the currency when progress in technology is being built, you would call that capitalism. But now the world relies on ideologies. So, so don't get too far into seeing capitalism, but capitalism is better than communism, but at the end of the day, it's not an ideology that wins, ultimately. It's kind of a middle ground. Did I move? Oh, I did, guys. I did that mistake I said I was going to eventually do. Yeah, see, when I move this, it switches over. Like, whenever I move it across the window, it overlaps underneath it. I didn't see it just now until I saw that preview. So, yeah. That's what I was talking about earlier when I first saw this video. Said I was going to make that mistake, and I did make that mistake. So, anyways, I'll end it here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. This video has gone on for a long time, an hour and 31 minutes. Not my longest one, but it's one of the longest ones. So, guys, I'll end it here, and hopefully this works. And hopefully that wasn't too loud, and I hope that we don't have any problems uploading this or any video or any problems. So, guys, I'll see you later, and I just hope this works out, this software, and I don't have to do this one over again. It was a lot. So, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.